So good morning, everybody. Happy Friday.
Good
How you
morning.
doing?
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
Fred, are you on?
morning.
Fred, are
Good
you
morning.
on?
Good morning. Good morning.
Fred, can you make me the host in case I need to do some muting along the way? Thank you.
Oh, there you are.
So it's exciting, exciting Friday morning. While we wait for some more people to get on, I just want to talk a little bit about, mindset, opportunities, gratitude, and gifts. Because this change in reality is a massive gift to ourselves and those of us who are committed to what we're doing. It's a tremendous opportunity, and it gives us the ability to differentiate ourselves from the competition. All right, if you just take that in for a second, the days of opening doors, running around, whose buyer is it anyway? I believe those are going to be gone. I would venture to say that with the 70 people that are on this call right now, there's probably not one person who took a listing and then somebody else had that same listing when you took it, because you would have noticed the sign there, you would have saw it on the MLS. Now I think buyer's agency is going to be the same way. We're going to know who's committed to us and who our clients are. We're going to be able to differentiate ourselves by having that value proposition to buyers, and it's going to be a game changer for us. Before we get started, I'm going to give a little bit of time for everybody else to get on the call. I want to just maybe take a few challenging questions or objections that you've come across this week, or some uncertainties that you have, and in an unscripted, unprepared manner, see if I can address those effectively for you. So fire away.
So Rob, I saw one on the on Facebook today, actually, for lab coat agents, where an agent was asking, how do you handle a buyer calling the listing agent to see a house? And when the listing agent says to them, are you working with a buyer's agent? They say, yeah, but I don't want to bother them until it becomes apparent that I'm really going to do something.
The way that I would address that would be, if I'm going to show you the property, then I'm going to be representing you on this particular transaction. I think that's the way that it's going to go. And I don't mean to be, a jerk, or I don't mean to be cutting off business, but I think that's probably, the way to go about it. Or, perhaps, Robert, I would even say, do you mind if I have your listing agent's information so I can let them know that you're coming to see it? And then tell them that I'll split it with you. I'll take a 35% referral fee for opening the door, and get that in writing.
Yeah, I think that's the good way to go, the second way that you mentioned, Rob.
Okay, well, that's why these things are great, because now we'll have some context and some opportunity to make decisions. Anybody else have any good questions for me?
Yeah, I got one.
Go ahead.
What you were just explaining, are these buyer broker agreements only per property as you go, or can you get a buyer broker agreement to show other properties if they don't like the first one you show?
So I think, Jeff, the question's twofold. One is, if we are introducing ourselves to a buyer or beginning a relationship, I think we want to define that we're going to be working with them for a period of time, and go through a little bit more of a in-depth conversation as to what value we provide, and make sure that they're comfortable committing to us, right? But in the circumstance with Robert Garber, where somebody calls and asks about, can you just show this house? I think that would be either a one-time showing, or it would be a referral agreement with the existing buyer's agent.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we weren't restricted to just a one-off, that we could get an agreement to work with that buyer.
Well, Jeff, that's excellent. That's an excellent question, Jeff. And I think the benefit here is that And I know in New Jersey, this is the way it's gonna work, and I suspect it's probably gonna be similar in Virginia and Florida. Is, if you work with somebody, let's say you sign an agreement for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. Our agreement as it's written in New Jersey gives somebody the opportunity to say, hey, you know what, Jeff, it's not working out with us. I want to terminate the relationship. Okay. And there's a 3-day period. And if that relationship is terminated, you, as the agent in New Jersey, and I'm going to suspect other states would be similar, you send a communication to the buyer saying that, hey, I'm sorry it didn't work out. I just want to let you know that I'm your agent on these 11 properties that I showed you. And that would be your procuring cause or your buyer protection letter. Okay, and I believe that that's the way it's designed to help out. Anybody else that was on the New Jersey webinar or anybody in Florida have any better input on that?
You can always refer that buyer if they're not, if they want to terminate your service, maybe call one of your other agents and just say, listen, these people don't want to use me. Maybe you can jump in here and just give me a referral fee if you sell them something. And then have them contact that buyer.
I mean, that's definitely a way of guaranteeing some revenue from there. But my thought there, Ron, is that might be in the circumstance where, somebody at the spouse's job says, hey, I'm a new licensee, I'm going to work with them. And there might be some other motivation. But that's a great idea. It's a great additional choice. Anybody in Florida have any insight as to, if that's going to be set up the same way where if somebody wants it? Yes?
Yeah, I just got, sorry, I've been gone for 2 weeks. I had surgery and I just got back from FAR meetings. I was in Orlando for a couple of days. And there's just a couple of things. If you want me to just go through this quick on what all is going on.
Absolutely.
Okay. They want us to remind you guys that this all started in 2019. This isn't just brand new. It started in 2019. Now, NAR and the DOJ did come to an agreement. They came to a settlement. But then in 2020, that's when everything kind of blew up and they went after this. We have not had a fair trial at all, as everybody knows. Now, they settled just like 96% of cases do. 4% don't. If they go back to challenge it, they have to put up a huge bond. So that's one of the reasons why I keep hearing, why don't they come back and just appeal it? So that's one of the things. We're still fighting down here in Florida in the Miami courts because the copycat cases have gone crazy. Now, one thing I keep hearing is what's going to happen in the different states. NAR is national. We are all going to have that buyer agreement, but they don't want us just calling it a buyer broker agreement. It's a buyer representation. Yes, you have to have it signed first, not when you show them, when you get to the contract or anything else. A buyer, that was part of the agreement, is buyer representation agreements would have to be signed first. Yes, you can take a deposit. You can do all kinds of things. Another thing that I heard on another meeting, which was quite concerning, is that you can put it in the remarks. No, one of the parts of the settlement is it cannot go anywhere on the MLS or in any of the tools that we use with MLS. Don't get cute and say, oh, we work with buyer brokers. You can't put anything in there at all that has anything to do with compensation. You can put it on your website. We can put it on the broker website.
Right.
We can call each other. We're going to have to start talking to each other again, but absolutely nowhere can it be in the MLS, in remarks, in anything.
So Deborah, I think we all have that expectation that, we're not gonna, play around the edge. We're not gonna be cute with compliance. But I'm curious as to what insight you have for the buyer representation agreement, particularly because that's what I'm focusing on here in the discussions that we have. Is there anything? Is the buyer representation agreement likely to be similar to New Jersey, where absent changes to it, somebody can cancel it with 3 days notice? And
They're tweaking it right now, and they haven't come up with it. NAR is working on one. Florida Realtors imposed a date of May 31st to come out with theirs. But the two that we have right now, we have the soft one that came out in 2006, and then we have our other current buyer agreement that came out in 2016. Those are the current agreements, period. And we can change them as office policy also. It doesn't just have to go by them. So a lot of it is going to be up to what you want.
right, so, and I'm just gonna wrap it up because I have a lot of content here, Deborah. The
Yeah.
agreement, if a buyer decides to cancel the representation agreement, do you see the Florida document providing the agent the ability to email them, notice, hey, I'm representing you on these 6 properties, 11 properties I showed you? Or does
We
that
already
remain to
have
be
that.
seen? So is there a requirement for the agent to send them a written notice after the agreement's terminated in a certain number of days, or not yet?
We don't know anything about that yet. They're still tweaking.
So my experience has been like a lot of times, like the best practices or the models that states adopt are based upon a foundation provided by somebody through the National Association. And that's how things promulgate through the system. So I'm guessing it's going to be similar to that, Deborah. So
Yes.
I look at these as all very, very positive changes. I really do. And I'm not just looking through rose-colored glasses. And to have the opportunity to differentiate ourselves from the rest of the pack is huge, right? I mean, in our
Yes.
industry, you know, we get gifts, and a gift was the low interest rates we had for a number of years, just created an abundance of activity. Even in that market, there were still people that were struggling trying to get buyers' offers accepted, right? Because there were 10, 15 offers on every listing. So there's pluses and minuses to all markets. This market, in my opinion, and my goal of sharing this information with you is to empower you to differentiate yourself, to provide enhanced value to buyer prospects
Right.
in the new paradigm. Okay, so I look at it from a very, very, very positive perspective. I look at it and I say, if we didn't have objections, right? If there weren't agents that were in fear, okay, we wouldn't have an opportunity to grow and to differentiate ourselves. Okay,
Right.
so objections in reality equal gifts. Objections equal opportunities once we learn how to solve them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So I am gonna see if there's one other objection that I could address before I kind of get into the
Rob,
my
can I,
presentation.
yeah, can I say something? I
Absolutely.
really feel that this is a step in growth for us. I also think it's a way of the public appreciating us more and respecting our professionalism. They've always taken advantage of us as far as loyalty, and I think this vindicates that. I think it's a step up for us. I truly do.
I agree.
Wonderful. That last chance to throw a hardball or a curveball at me with a question that that I can try to address before we go into my presentation or my conversation.
Rob,
Yes, sir.
Gary, I know we're not permitted to publish any buyer agency agreement terms, but are we allowed to put something in remarks for agents only? Please call and put the phone number, my phone number, for information regarding buyer broker compensation, so that they know that perhaps there's something that might be offered by a seller to a buyer. Is it
I
without
believe
specifying?
okay, Gary, I believe that's what Deborah was talking about, and I think it's going to be understood that there's an extra step in the process. And
Yes.
Deborah, is that addressed correctly? Because that's my understanding.
Yes. Nowhere on the MLS can it be even hinted at, and nowhere on our MLS tools, which also means our showing time.
Yeah.
Absolutely nowhere can it be. Only on your website.
I
We
wouldn't.
could,
I wouldn't look to circumvent the system because I think that, you know, the DOJ has made it very clear. And that that's not something that they see as being in the public's best interest, and they intend to defend those practices that they see aren't compliant.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Are we allowed to do a conditional compensation once we do interact with another broker? And have that if the buyer broker has already signed and agreed to whatever arrangements they might have, that if the seller had said, well, I'll give 2% or 3% or whatever it is, and now the buyer has already had an agreement structured, which takes precedence, and how do you work through that type of a situation?
The
So-
way the ruling has come out is that when you have your buyer representation agreement, if you have 3% in there and the buyer was giving, the seller was giving 3 and they wanted to give you more, you cannot earn a single penny more than what is on the buyer representation agreement. And that includes working with builders where they're going to give you a little extra, or an agent says, I'm going to give you a bonus. You cannot make one single penny more than what is written on that buyer representation agreement before showing any property.
Even if we get never to see that buyer agency agreement, how would we know?
So,
that-
so,
that-
so Gary, I think I'm going to try to wrap this up, then go on. So I think Deborah's saying that if you agree to a 2% commission, and Gary, you're putting out a 3% commission, or you're putting out a 3% plus a $5,000 bonus, that the buyer's agent is only entitled to the 2 in the agreement, and the extra 1% of bonus goes to the buyer's agent. Now, I do think that you could put in there that your fee is 2% plus any bonuses that are offered. I believe that may be compliant, okay, but that would have to be written out in advance, okay, and that might be a way to work within the framework of the system. But that's not the goal right here, and more clarity, Gary, I think is going to happen as this rolls out, right, and we see the practices.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I am looking at Kathy. Are you able to talk now? I want to take a minute to just share a phenomenal success story. Kathy Bagwell, are you able to say hi and give us a 1 minute, or is it a bad time for you? You're on mute.
Looks like she's driving.
I hope she's not driving, because she's not looking at.
It looks like it, yeah.
Kathy, are you driving? You have to hit the unmute button. This is worth waiting, just FYI. You're probably on the phone. On the bottom left, there's an unmute button, if you can see it there. At least on an
your
iPhone.
cell phone.
Yeah,
Can you
That-
hear me now?
we can hear you now.
Let me put
So-
myself on speaker.
So everybody, Kathleen Bagwell and Kathleen and her partner Jill and I did a FSBO visitation, and I just want you to take a minute to share what having courage has produced for you.
So yes, we were, I called on a FSBO that's in our farm area, and just to inquire, just to introduce myself as a local expert realtor that works with buyers and sellers in the area. And he explained that he wasn't ready to list with an agent. He wasn't in a hurry, all the objections. And I just asked for more information on the property and what he was asking for the price. And then from there, we talked a little further, and I said, do you mind if we come over and see your house? And he said, of course. So Rob happened to be in town, so he came on the appointment with us. So Jill, Rob, and I went over and met with Frank, and he was very nice, but he was still very adamant about not listing the property on the market or on the MLS. So after touring his home, we all sat down, and from there we kind of just said, you know, why don't you want to list? You know, what's your time frame? Asked all the questions. Where do you plan to go once your house sells? And anyway, we came up with a suggestion that how about we do an off-market open house for him, and he was actually open to that idea. So about a week later, Jill and I did an open house for him. And we just put it on all our social media. We did a Facebook event for the public, and we also door knocked around the neighborhood and invited all of the neighbors to the open house, which presented a pretty good turnout. We had about 15 groups through. And from there, we compiled like a list of feedbacks. We had everybody who came through give their price opinion, how they felt the condition of the house was, that sort of thing. And so a couple days after the open house, we went back over and met with Frank and his wife again and explained, you know, who had come through the open house and what they had mentioned. And at that time, we were able to gain his trust, and he decided that he was ready to list on the MLS.
And Kathleen, did he lower the price too when he listed it as well?
He did. He did. He came
how much?
down about $55,000,
Mm.
which was more in line with the pricing, you know, the comps of the neighborhood, which we had provided with him at both the initial appointment and the second time we visited.
And I being at the meeting can tell you, he must have said that he was not going to list it 7 to 10 times, correct?
Correct.
He just kept saying, I'll pay you if you bring me a client, but I'm not going to list it. I'm not going to list it. I'm not. Every direction went to, he's not going to list it. So I just wanted to give everybody a shout out to what relationships and follow-up can do for you. Okay. So I'm really proud of what you guys did. I'm glad to have been a witness to it, and congratulations.
Yes, and we were able to sell his house in less than 5 weeks from listing it on the MLS to closing in 5 weeks. So he was very happy today.
And can you just share how much was the transaction for?
We listed for 1.195, and we got a cash offer for 1.1.
And do you mind sharing what was the compensation, both ends, buyer and seller?
Total 5%, split 50-50.
5% on a million, over $1 million listing. Big shout out and congrats. Thank you for sharing that with us. Hopefully you'll inspire.
Michelle, this is Forrest with Remax Select. How are you? Good. I was calling about 220 Kings Highway. My buyer.
There we go. Somebody's doing business. So Kathy, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I want to just give everybody an update on lending. And Frank, if you can just give us like 60 seconds, 90 seconds max, you know, what has transpired to help us better serve our clients from the lending world. You are muted as well, Frank. Maybe he's on a call.
Good morning. I had myself unmuted and I must have muted myself. Good morning, happy Friday to everybody. So just I'm going to start off again, the elephant in the room is the mortgage interest rates. Obviously, over the last 2 weeks, it's been pretty bad. Bond market has gone from a 4.30, 4.20 yield up to a 4.60, almost 4.70 yield. So rates are starting to go back up. We're nationally over 7% right now. We do still have some programs that are in the 6s. It just depends on the circumstance, but that's that's where we currently are. And I know Rob's going to talk about handling the objections, why it's not good to wait for the rates to come down. So I'm going to move on from that over to the NAR settlement, or the NAR. Another elephant in the room is the buyer broker agreement. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, who lends us the money to lend everybody, came out with their selling notice on Monday, April 15th. And basically what they're stating now is with seller contributions, if you put down, whether it's, 3%, 5%, 10%, 25%, there's max seller concession. So if you put down 5% on a conventional transaction, the seller can pay 3% towards your closing costs. But if you put down 10%, they can max out at 6% seller concession. So that's our standard, 2% for investment properties regardless, and 9% if you put 25% down. But let's talk about the 3 and the 6%, because that's what's typical to our areas. So typically what happens is on a seller concession, the max they can pay is, and I'm going to go with a 5%, with a 10% down payment, is 6% towards the buyer's closing costs. So on a $500,000 home, if they're putting 10% down, they can potentially pay $30,000 towards their closing costs. What happens if their closing costs are 20? They can only pay up to the allowable closing costs, so they can't get any cash back. So that's what happens. Now, if you throw in a buyer broker agreement of another 3%, it's just going to blow it out of the water. So Fannie, Freddie, and FHA have come out with, and I'm just going to read what they had stated in their selling notice. It says the interested party contributions, which is the seller concessions, to make contributions towards the buyer's closing costs subject to maximum limits ranging between 2 and 9% of the property value. Their customary fees are not subject to these interest party contributions. So basically what they're saying is you could still do the 6% or the 3% seller concession, but they will allow the 3% or 2% buyer broker agreement. So it's not going to affect those seller contributions. So again, yep.
So that I think that's huge.
Huge.
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about when we talk to our clients as real estate professionals, how we need to, take the shop language out of it. And, Frank, I would say that probably 95 to 99% of all the businesses, FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA, or underwritten to those standards, right? So even banks that portfolio stuff, they generally follow Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac guidelines. So this is a huge favorable change for the industry, right?
Yeah, they do. And the only one that's still on the fence is VA. VA hasn't come out with anything yet, so they're
Right.
still on the fence. And again, Fannie and Freddie, they're going to continue to monitor this.
VA is going to figure it out.
Yeah, they will. Absolutely.
VA is going to figure it out. That's the good news.
Yep.
So anyway, Frank helps us down in Florida with Motto Mortgage, our affiliate company. Thank you for sharing that, Frank, and thank you for everybody who supports Cornerstone First and Motto. We really appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
So getting on to, I have 2 full pages of notes, and I want to make sure everybody knows where you can get these, because I'm going to share my screen for just a second. On this bomb video I send out, there's this little link here, scripts and objection handling, whatever the topic is for the week. If you click on that, that will take you to the document that I work on every week. If you click on it before the session, a lot of times I won't have it finalized and I won't post it until it's done. Okay, just to give you a little bit of a tip. So you don't have to write everything down as much as you might think you have to. If there were no objections, we'd have no jobs. Let me just put it that way. If there were no objections, there would be no need for us. Okay. It's normal for clients to have doubts, be apprehensive, and show resistance when buying. Okay, that's not just the real estate industry. That's basically any sales business. Every objection is a gift or an opportunity. Okay. If you don't know how to address an objection, in my opinion, you don't deserve the business. I hate to be so direct. And if you do understand how to address objections, these are wild opportunities and huge gifts. So when you know the right thing to say and do, you will ease their anxiety and earn their business. Part of it, objection handling, is showcasing the complexity of what we do and delivering the simplicity. Showcase the complexity, deliver the simplicity. All right. I'm going to go through some objections that I've been helping our team with, and then I'm going to maybe hope that these spur some additional objections that you have in your mind that I can help you address. Anybody that asks me a question, these are not staged questions if you're new to the call. I just love what I do, and I want to try to add value and address anything, and I feel I can address anything. So the big monkey in the room is the NAR settlement, and a lot of people fumble with, addressing the NAR settlement. Okay, if somebody says, hey, I heard that commissions are coming down. I heard that the real estate industry was sued. I heard that 6% commissions are gone. Does anybody want to volunteer how they would address a consumer who brings that up to your attention? Any volunteer? Nobody?
I'll.
Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, if someone asks you, I heard the commissions are coming down, you can say to them, well, what you're hearing on the media news is not always correct. So here's the basics. The basics is commissions are always going to stay the same. They all are negotiable. And we do want to help the buyer's agents and give them a compensation also. So you can overcome that objection by just letting them know that nothing's really changed. It's just the wording has changed. Can't be on the MLS anymore. But now
Right.
buyer representation, and we should pay the cooperating broker.
So Ron, in the beginning, there was a hint of defending, and then it was a lot about educating, right?
Yeah.
My bias is going to be avoid the defending, because that sounds, that doesn't come across, in my opinion, well, but at the end you're educated, which I think is where we should be leading with. So for example, I too share the same opinion that you do, that it's been grossly misrepresented in the media, but defending that doesn't come across well, in my opinion. If we were to say, hey, Ron, I'm glad you brought that up. There are some exciting new changes happening in the industry, providing enhanced transparency to both buyers and sellers. I'm anxious to talk to you about how those changes can impact you. And I would completely avoid talking about how the media botched the job, right? Because that doesn't really, does anybody see the benefit of, hey, being excited and embracing the positive that's going on? And Ron,
Absolutely.
I was where you were, Ron, so I'm not being critical, but I wanted to highlight the second half of your conversation versus the first.
Our attitude is extremely important. If we believe what we say, they will believe what we say. And it adds confidence.
Yep. So
Rob?
to the extent also, instead of starting with that may not be completely true and highlighting what's good about the change, I would even take it a step further, and when I'm talking to people, I'd say, hey, have you heard about the exciting new changes in our industry? Instead of waiting for them to ask. How about that for a pivot, right?
That's fine. Sounds good.
Hey, I heard I no longer need to pay the buyer's commission when I sell. Okay, I'm expecting to hear that, right? And my response to that is, hey, I'm glad you asked. We never required you to pay the buyer's side of the commission. And with the recent changes, I will share with you the benefits and challenges of offering the buyer's agent commission or the buyer a closing credit or a seller's concession. I'm glad you asked this. We never required you to pay the buyer's side commission. And with the recent changes, I will share with you the benefits and challenges of offering the buyer's agent commission or a buyer's credit. I mean, that to me just sounds so much more positive. Like I'm gravitated towards that. More choices are better than less choices, right? Identifying that you always had choices is a positive, in my opinion. Objection 3 that many of you come to me with, hey, I heard that I don't need to work with a buyer's agent and I can buy directly from the listing agent without a fee. Hey, I heard that I don't need a buyer's agent. I don't need to work with a buyer's agent. I can buy directly without a fee. Couple of things. Would you want to be unrepresented would be part of my conversation I'm going to have with buyers. Number 2 is if you get paid part of the commission back, there may even be tax implications. I'm going to encourage everybody to pivot from using the term buyer's consultation to something that's more in line with what it is, and I'm going to use the term strategy session. So we're going to have a buyer or a seller strategy session. Okay. If nothing else, it's going to differentiate us from what 98% of the other brokers are saying or agents are saying to their clients. You know, objection. I heard that I can now hire my buyer's agent, only pay you $1,500 to prepare the contract or to prepare the contract and the inspection items. They might even say to you, that seems fair because that's all the attorney's going to charge is $1,500 or $2,000. And again, what I think we need to do is identify and pull back from the $1,500 just to fill out a form, because I would bet you that most of us would fill out a form for $1,500, but that's not the process, right? But I think when a consumer asks you for that, the perceived value that we have is only filling out a form. Correct?
There's a lot more that goes into it than just that. And that's what you need to explain to them.
Right. So it goes back to Kathy and Jill's meeting with Frank, where Frank said 7 to 10 times, I'm not going to list my house. I'll offer you 2.5% or 3% if you bring me the buyer, to building trust, right? Maybe even offering some, like doing that open house, which had benefit to Frank and to Kathleen and Jill. And then ultimately that wound up in a transaction where everybody benefited. You know, Frank got his house from date of signing the agreement to money in the bank 5 weeks. That's quite impressive. If he was doing a FSBO, he probably still would not be sold. So if we can, you know, change the narrative and say, hey, you know, if you wanted to pay me $1,500 to write up an offer, you know, that would be something that we can discuss. But I would like to have a strategy session about the whole process and what your expectations are, right? Because I think most people are going to say, I'm not going to do that for $1,500, or their body language is going to convey that message and it's going to turn the client off, right? So if a home seller says, I'm not going to list my house 10 times, and you get turned off and your attitude reverberates that you're disappointed, you're probably not going to get that listing in 3 weeks from when you met. So let's use the term strategy session for our buyers and sellers. You know, this is a mindset for me here, and I just wrote some random thoughts. I choose to be optimistic, maybe even overly optimistic, and I may be wrong or slightly wrong about some of the aspects of where this lands in the future, but I certainly prefer that to being negative, pessimistic, and saying I was right. Does that make sense? Because there may be things that, there may be unintended consequences that aren't as I see them now. I do have confidence that with this, you know, amazing team of professionals that we're all surrounded by, that we'll be able to navigate, and we'll be able to wind up being the top half of the top 1%, because that's where I strive to be with everybody. The experience of your life and your business is what you focus on. The experience of your life and your business is what you focus on. So you can focus on the negative, you can focus on the positive. I choose the positive. Fear and anger are disabling emotions. Okay. Stand guard at the door of your mind. And this goes for ourselves and our clients, because some of our clients may say, I really wish I would have bought 2 years ago. I'm fearful, I'm angry. I have these disempowering emotions that can drive my decision-making. And our job is to remove the fear by providing clarity. The path of least resistance will not make you happy and strong. Okay, the path of least resistance will not get the job done. The highest and best use of our time the highest and best use of our time is getting to meet and talk with people and getting them to say yes, right? And, you know, I'm looking at Gary Singer, he's been an owner and an icon in Union County for years. Gary, can you get somebody to buy who doesn't want to buy?
Hmm.
Probably
Occasion-
not, right?
yeah,
I mean, you can't convince somebody to sell if they don't want to move, right?
Usually not, right, right.
But there are people that don't make decisions because they're fearful, right? And if we can remove the fear, okay, and we have that ability to understand that it's not, you know, this person's not going to move. You know, they have kids that are sophomores and juniors in high school. They're not going to move until they graduate. You know, sometimes you have to have the good common sense to know that I'm not going to keep trying to get this person to do something that's not in their best interest, despite how good of a salesperson we are. But there's a lot of people, if we keep meeting people, we can identify people who might be frozen because of fear or incomplete information, and then we can educate them and help them to get to say yes.
But
Okay.
the fear, using the concept of fear of loss is probably the greatest motivation out there. And if you can demonstrate why, if they don't act at this time, it's propitious to do it, that fear of loss can be a great motivator, and a deal can be done.
Right. And Gary, what I want to highlight, because I really consider you to be you know, an expert and have really good business acumen. Trying to work one person to try to change their mind, who's very unlikely or it's not in their best interest to sell, is probably not the best use of time. You need to have more conversations and have a wider base of people that you can talk to, find the people who really need our services, because I personally believe, like, the best salesman in the world, if it's not in their interest, they're not going to move. So we just need to have more conversations and find the people who are willing to say yes. Okay, that's the distinction that I see looking at all you great professionals and saying sometimes, you know, instead of spending 3 hours with somebody who's never going to move, spend 15 minutes with 15 people. Better use of our time, having more conversations, getting to meet more people. Gary, thank you. Proactive conversations. Okay, this is going back to, instead of waiting for somebody to bring up an objection, wouldn't it be great to address that before it even happens? And I think it comes across as having more integrity when we do that. Hey, there's some exciting news. You know, there's been some changes in the industry, and then say, "Oh, well, I heard about that NAR settlement." Well, that's what the exciting news is all about. Provides more transparency to you, Mr. Garver and Ms. Gimes. It's great. Everybody wins. Like, that's how I feel. I'm excited to talk about it.
You know, Rob, just before the mastermind actually got going, Ron and I had a quick conversation. Some people who got on early might have heard it. But what came to mind was, if we go back to one of the original objections, when you're having a listing conversation, is if the seller says to you right up front, "What's your commission?" You know, my reaction is, you know, that's a great question, and I'll answer it for you. But first, let me talk to you about what I'm going to do in order to earn that commission. That's the conversation that it really seems to fit right now in response to this settlement. Let me show you what I'm going to do for you, and then we can talk about compensation.
And Robert, I can, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I can say that when somebody asks that to you, you answer with 101% confidence because you know you're doing the right thing.
Exactly, exactly.
Now, I want to even maybe take that and give you a little bit of a lemon twist on that cocktail, okay? And say that, you know what, Robert, let's have a little bit more of a conversation to make sure I'm the right person and that we're a good fit to work together before we talk about compensation. Is that fair?
Sure.
Now, who likes that? Like, if you ever had, hey, let's determine if we're a good fit before we talk about money.
I
Yeah,
like
money
that a
that-
lot.
Money doesn't matter, if you're not a good fit, right? It doesn't matter how much you're charging, in my opinion. So, there's a little lemon twist on that, great, conversation that you had there, Robert. Skill set, mindset, work habits, bias for action, bias for learning. This is my random thoughts and it's going somewhere. Culture of accountability, data-driven decisions, business is math, avoiding emotional gut decisions. Takes us to a little bit more of objection handling. And let me just go to my little document. All right. So we have home buyer objections. All right. And I don't know, is anybody from the Gopi team on here? So I had a great meeting with
Yeah, we're here, Rob.
oh, you're there together.
Yes, sir. How you doing? Good morning,
So everybody owes the Gopi team a thumbs up because when I sat with them earlier this week, they had some challenges and some objections. They said, hey, can you give me a hand answering this? And one of your newer team members said, hey, I have a client who said, I'm going to hold off on buying because interest rates are too high, right? And I said, there's your gift. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, my answer would just be too high relative to what? Right?
Yes.
And if somebody says I'm going to hold off because interest rates are too high, and I said, relative to what? How's a buyer gonna answer that?
Well, a buyer's gonna say relative, like, so for example, in your scenario, when we role played, which I think that we did a pretty good job, is we could tell the buyer, how would you feel if the rate goes to 9%?
Right.
And let's talk.
So there's a couple other things. And Michael, you're stealing my show here, buddy. But I'm glad you paid attention. So I want you to remember this point. And if somebody says, hey, we're going to wait because interest rates are high. And if you ask them high relative to what, most people will be like struggling to answer that, right? Because there is a herd mentality, right? When rates were low, everybody's buying, I have to buy. Now everybody's waiting, I have to wait. And if you say they're high relative to what, at least you get some insight into what they feel. Well, it's high relative to what they used to be 2 years ago. Well, you know what? It's in line with what it was 5 years ago. Right?
Correct.
And, let me ask you, and to Michael's point where he paid attention. So, Michael, if interest rates didn't go down, would you be a renter for the rest of your life?
No.
I think that's a fair question, right?
Correct.
And then some of the other conversations that we had from role playing, one of them was, Michael, I want to wait until interest rates go down. And why don't you share that with us? Because I know you nailed that one.
You want to jump in? Jump in, Frank.
Well, what do you think will happen if the rates drop?
I'll get a better deal.
You'll
No
get a
cost
better
less.
deal, but would you still be dreaming of that home that you want? It may be gone by the time you're still waiting.
So I think Frank, I put you on the spot, but so the question that you wanted to say, and I knew it was on your mouth, was what's going to happen to the number of buyers if the rates drop?
They'll rise.
There's gonna
So
be
so if there's more,
again.
so Frank, if there's more buyers
More
if there are more
competition.
buyers looking to buy, do you think there will be more or less competition bidding on that house that you'd like to be in?
Oh, 100% more competition.
And if there's more competition, do you think you'll be paying more or less for that house if you're fortunate enough to win the bid?
The prices will skyrocket since
And
there's more.
you'll pay, we pay more, right? So so if we wait for the rates to drop, even if you're fortunate enough to get the house, you're gonna wind up paying more for it. Now, Frank, let me ask you, if you had happened to make the decision to buy today, and in 6 months, 1 year, or 4 years, rates drop, what are you gonna do?
I
Refinance.
could refinance and get a better deal in the moment.
Right, and now, Frank, if you bought right now and there's world turmoil and rates never go back down to 7% again, and they go up to 9, 10, and 11%, how would you feel about your 7% mortgage?
I would feel so great that I locked it in at a good rate because can't predict the future.
Great. So when would you like to go out and start looking? This Saturday, or would you prefer Monday afternoon?
Let's do it Saturday morning.
But who genuinely likes that script, and who has some who doesn't see that working effectively? And I want some honest feedback from me so I can serve you better.
No, I love this. We actually, our team loves that script, and we appreciate you coming to the office and giving us some good tips. I mean, it's truly a win-win situation. If you buy now and the rates go to 9, you feel really good, and the rates drop to 5, you can refi. So I love that script.
And your customer will really appreciate you for that.
I actually liked what you used about the coin, if you want to share, Rob, with the team.
All right.
That was a pretty good analogy.
So Michael, how would you feel about it if I was to give you an opportunity to flip a coin, and if I told you heads you win, tails you win? Would you like to do that bet?
Yep, love that.
Or you could even say, hey, I'm going to flip a coin. It's a 2-headed coin. You call it. What are you going to call?
Heads all the
Because
time.
if you buy now before prices go up, you win, right? And if you buy now and rates go down, you refinance. If you buy now and rates go up, you just said that you were really happy that you had a 7% rate locked in when rates are at 9. So I think that's the mindset that I don't think we educate the buyers about, right?
Yeah, because it's a win-win situation at the end.
Right. Lisa Grande, did you have something that you wanted to say, or so you unmuted yourself for a nanosecond?
Yeah, that was me. I have a cousin that wanted to wait, and I used that on him, and he listed, and we're looking actively. So, thank you.
Congrats, Lisa. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Rob, this is Jackie Godheim. Can
Yes,
I add
Jackie.
something? I've
Yep.
used this past several people that I've spoken with, buyers. The more money that you pay in points, the lower your interest rate is. So since the market right now, the rates are high, if we encourage them to go with a little bit higher rate, if they're planning on staying in the property long enough to and because we're probably going to refinance when the rates drop, with the positive attitude that rates will drop, then they're not wasting that cash at the closing up front. As long as they are, like I said, willing, this is a move there, they're going to be there for a while. And then of course, if rates do go up higher, like you said, they're happy that they locked in. But that's something also a selling point to talk away from the higher rates. Yes, we're going to refinance. Don't lay out the cash right now. We'll use it when we can lower the rate.
And Jack, I'm going to get into some stuff where you're going to be essential in helping buyers make decisions. That's exciting. So I would say instead of a buyer agency consultation, let's say a strategy session. I like that better. Number one, it differentiates us, and it's more appropriate to what we're really doing. Okay. I would even write this down if you're talking to somebody that's renting. Yeah, I'd say, let's come in for a rent power analysis review. Rent power analysis review. And for those of us that have been around for a long time, it's basically an enhanced rent versus buy conversation. And I did a sample, and I put it all on the document. Where's the document? Whereas a document is in the email, you just click on it and you all have access to this. Rent power analysis for somebody who was buying a house for $500,000. Okay. And I assume the mortgage payment was about $3,000 for P&I, $1,000 a month for taxes, $400 for insurance, $100 for PMI, for a round number payment of $4,500. And I compared that to, if they were renting. Now, if you bought that house for $45 and the monthly payment of $4,500, it's all on this sheet here, so don't stress yourself out. And your lenders at Cornerstone First or Motto can help you with this. Your payment's $4,500. You're amortizing the loan, or you have a forced savings. It's like your 401k of $400 a month that you're paying the principal down. And over time, that amortization goes up, right? Because your first payments are very low. Once you're 15 years into it, you're paying $2,000 a month in principal. You have tax savings, okay, from the interest that you're paying, because even though the interest rates are slightly higher, the government subsidizes that. And I think, Frank, we might even talked about your tax effective interest rate. Did we talk about that, Frank? Lanza, Francis?
Say that again?
Did we talk about your tax effective interest rate when we met, or we didn't talk about that? That might have been with somebody else.
No, we haven't spoken about that. No.
So a tax effective interest rate would be the payment net of your tax savings. So if your interest rate was 7.25 and you're able to take 25 to 30% of that off as a tax savings, maybe your interest rate is 5.25 or 5.5. And you might be able to say, hey, Francis, if you had an effective interest rate of 5.5, would you be interested in buying at this point?
Yeah.
Right. And any of our lenders can probably tell you that, if your interest on that $4,500 was, $2,800 or $3,000, and you're in a 30% tax bracket, you're in essence getting a subsidy from the government in forms of tax savings of a certain amount of dollars. Property taxes. Okay, property taxes are also tax deductible. If they're $1,000 a month, I'm not a CPA, but I think you get a $10,000 limitation on that with the SALT. So that might give you a $200 to $300 a month savings on your income taxes. Okay. Here's something I'll bet you most of us don't calculate. Right? When you fill out the payment, what do you put in the payment? Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, right? So in this $4,500, I have principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and amortization. When you compare it to rentals, that payment of $4,500, if somebody was renting for $3,500, right? It's not a fair comparison, even prima facie. Because somebody renting for $3,500 is probably buying a renter's insurance policy, or they absolutely should have one, right? So you need to offset and only use the difference between the rental insurance and the homeowner's insurance policy. Okay, does everybody get that? That's a small distinction, but these things add up.
Yeah.
So in this particular instance, the rent equivalent was $2,975. If they were paying $3,500 a month in rent, they're saving $500 a month. Okay. And since the pandemic, most of us haven't taken the time, both lenders and real estate professionals, to educate the consumer on this deep dive in how it really works, right? And what percentage of the consumers do you think really understand the difference? I'd say very, very little. Okay, so this is all here on this sheet. And then if you were to make a couple of comparisons, right? Let's just say that I actually assume the rental was only $3,000. If the rent increased 3% annually, okay, and they stayed in the house for 10 years, in 10 years, the rent will have gone up to over $4,000, and in 15 years, over $4,500 a month. In the meantime, your mortgage payment will have stayed the same. you'll be paying more principal on the mortgage down, right? So everything gets better for homeowners, everything gets worse for renters. Everything gets better for homeowners, everything gets worse for renters. Now, if you assume that rent increases by 5%, right? Then the renter goes from 3,000 to 4,600 a month in 10 years, while their mortgage is fixed at 4,500 a month, and they're paying off principal, and they have the tax benefit, plus they have appreciation for the home. But wait, there's even more. I feel like a 2 a.m. infomercial. Now, if you sell your primary residence, okay, and you do that every 2 years, how much federal tax do you pay on the profit from your selling your primary residence? Who knows the answer to that?
You're exempt up to 250,000 if you're married, up to 500,000 of capital gains.
So let's just break this down. So you get a tax deduction, you get forced savings through amortization, you get tax deduction on your interest and your property taxes, you get appreciation, and you don't pay taxes on the gains. Mic drop moment.
Case closed.
Huh?
Case closed.
Wait, is that a mic drop moment?
It is what it is. Yes, right.
But how many of us have honestly had these conversations to that in-depth level? And the good news is, if you're just a rock star agent and you don't want to do all these numbers, you know, talk to Cornerstone First and Motto. They can help you run these analyses. And honestly, homeowners are 40 times, have a net worth of 40 times the value of renters. And this is why. I don't even need to make an argument or make a case. This speaks for itself. Okay.
Hey, Rob, I just want to add in, and keep in mind, everything he's talking about now is about, believe it or not, is about fear. It's about the fear of the unknown. How many people actually go from renting to buying and actually know how much they're going to be paying? No, they all make that phone call to the mortgage guy. The mortgage guy says, okay, I'm qualified for this. Yeah, that's great, but does it really give them the confidence to pull the trigger? You know, to my mortgage guys out there, you can help us on your end too. You know, mention that a chunk of it comes down in principal. Mention that it's, you know, the tax deductible, right? Because the government hasn't really figured out a way to tax our taxes just yet. Well, although over $10,000 they have, but that's another story for another day. But I have a spreadsheet. It shows what the payment's going to be. It shows your amortization. Sometimes you can add fear to your side. Look, how well have you been doing with your retirement savings? Would this help with your retirement savings? Yes. You know, isn't that something you would want? Yes. Get to those questions that get you the yes after yes after yes. And by the fifth yes, the sixth yes is always so much easier. And I love my sixth or seventh yes always starts with possible. So it sounds like it's possible you might want to buy a home now. Is that correct? Yes.
Absolutely.
So it's with that step-by-step process to lead them there. Don't try to take them in one big chunk. You want to buy a house? No, why not? It's too big of a chunk. But if you're doing what Rob is essentially trying to get you to understand, is that take them with the baby steps. Get the little yes with the principal pay down. Get the little yes with the taxes are going to help you moving forward. Get the little texts. This is going to be something for your retirement. Okay, so it sounds like this is a financial situation you feel comfortable with and something that's going to be better for you in the long term. Is that correct? Yes. It seems possible you might want to make an offer. Is that correct? Yes. Okay,
So Sal, I'm going to for those of you who are in the leadership team, you know I'm a spreadsheet head. I'm going to work on a spreadsheet that you can plug in some simple numbers and you can share with the buyer in 5 years, 10 and 15 years, based upon their own assumptions, right? I would say, you know, Sal, if I told you that historically home prices have increased 4.7% annually, what number are you comfortable with for home appreciation over the next 10 years? Right? They might say 4, 3.5, 5, whatever. And then say, hey, Sal, you've been renting for the past 6 years. What do you think the average rental increase is going to be per year? And they'll give you a number. It's 2%, 5%. You put their numbers into the spreadsheet and it tells you the advantage to buying over time. And then everything just gets better. Hey, if interest rates drop, it only gets better, right? If appreciation's higher, it only gets better. Hey, by the way, you get a tax write-off. Hey, by the way, the appreciated value in your home is tax-free up to $500,000. Like these are all things. These are all things that are slated in the advantage of home ownership in the United States of America. So let's educate our consumers on that. Sal?
And if you want to add a little fear to that, you could just say, listen, do you think the population growth is going to grow at the same rate they're building? Because they're not building like they used to years ago, right? So if we have population going up and nobody's building, what do you think that's going to do to rental values? You're going to get crushed going forward. There's no doubt about it, because we're growing exponentially with regards to population growth. So you might want to use that as a fear factor going forward and say, look, do you really want to be in that position later on? Or do you want to be locked into something you feel comfortable with over the next 20 years?
Right. And I think we need to be aware that a lot of the buying decision is emotion, not logic. So a lot of those questions earlier on were more emotional. But here is something that is awesome for those of us who stayed on the call over time. And this link here is something I found today in my prep for this. Is these housing markets are seeing the biggest spike in home inventory. Okay, and then on this attachment I sent to you, check this out. I don't know, Eric Pruitt, are you still on? If you are, you got to look at this because this is amazing. You can look at the 5-year change in inventory. Okay, and you can play around with the numbers. So, for example, I want to look at the biggest increase in inventory over the past 5 years is Panama City, Florida. Or I want to look at the biggest increase in inventory over the past 2 years is Sarasota, Bradenton. Inventory is up 550%. In Punta Gorda, it's up 500. Look at all these Florida markets, right? So you can use this when you're talking to your sellers about what's going on.
Do you have that for the New Jersey market as well?
Oh, hold on here. I knew you'd ask me that. So you can go here and search New Jersey. There's your New Jersey market. New York Metro. In the past 2 years, Mickey, inventory is down 4%. In the past 5 years, it's down 50%. In the past 1 year, we're down 12%. Is this a cool tool?
Is that on your page?
It's on the sheet here. It's right over here on the sheet. It's on the bottom of the sheet. This is the interactive chart, and then this is the article. So there's my final mic drop moment for you. And I really, encourage you to educate, don't defend, choose to be optimistic. There may be some things that aren't as we vision them today, but it's those who make the effort to learn and to help that are going to win the game. And people are always going to be buying and selling. And, those of us who are on these calls are going to provide a better level of service to our clients. And I can't tell you how much you